When converting fractions to percentages, let's start with some simple ones. These ones you just basically need to learn. 1/2 is the same as 50%. A quarter is half of that, which would be 25%. 3/4 can be calculated in two ways. You can either do a half and a quarter or 3 lots of a quarter, which would give you 75%. The next one's pretty key. 1/10 is 10%. When moving on to 1/5, well, that's the equivalent of 2/10. So it's the same as double 1/10, which will be 20%. If you can remember all of these, that's a good start for converting fractions into percentages. Let's move on to some tricky ones. Now in these, the denominator is a factor of 100, so we can change them into percentages by first changing them into a fraction with the denominator, which is 100. So for 4/25, if we times the bottom by 4, we get 100 on the bottom. And whatever you do to the bottom, you also need to do to the top, which will give us 16/100. This number at the top becomes 16%, because percent means out of 100. With 3/20, we can change the 20 into 100 by timesing by 5. Whatever you do to the bottom, you also do to the top. Times by 5 to give you 15, and that gives you 15%. Moving on to slightly trickier ones. Now these two are slightly hard because the denominator is not a factor of 100. So first of all, we need to change them into factors of 100 by dividing. 9/30, okay, I can change that into tenths because both of these numbers are divisible by 3. So divide by 3 gives us 10, divide by 3 gives us 3. From there, I can times the top and the bottom by 10 to give us 30 over 100. This fraction's over 100, so the top number becomes 30%. Similarly, for 24 over 40, I can't change 40 into 100 straight away. So first of all, look for common factors of these numbers. I know that both of them are divisible by 4, and that will give me 10 on the bottom when I divide by 4. Whatever I do to the bottom, I also do to the top, which will give me 6 at the top. Times both of those by 10 to give me 60 over 100. This number at the top becomes 60%. Those are pretty much as tricky as you get, but you sometimes get some what we call weirdos. Now these ones, initially you think to yourself, there's no way I can change 31 over 62 into percentages because I can't change 62 into 100. But if you look really closely, 31 is half of 62. So this fraction is basically equivalent to a half, dividing the top and the bottom by 31. Once you know it's a half, hey presto, it's 50%. This one here, again, another one where it isn't immediately obvious, but if you notice that 13 goes into 52 4 times, you can divide the top and the bottom by 13. That will give you 1 over 4, a quarter, which we know is equivalent to 25%. So for these, it's not really a case of a lot of calculating, it's looking out for patterns between the numerator and the denominator.